In 1949, Albert Einstein said, "If bees disappeared from the face of the earth, humanity would survive no more than 4 years." This quote is disputed. Historians say Einstein never said that. Maybe. But here's what is true. Scientists are saying exactly this. Without bees, the planet's food chain collapses completely within a few years. Not because we would miss honey, but because bees pollinate 80% of all flowering plants on Earth. And flowering plants are almost all of our food. At the same time, bees are disappearing right now, all over the world. Thousands of hives, millions of individual bees, and most people don't even think about it. There are about 20,000 species of bees on the planet. Most of us know only one, the honeybee. The other, 19,999 species, live their quiet lives. Some alone, some in small families. They build nests in the ground, in plant stems, in cracks in rocks. We just don't notice them. And this creates a dangerous illusion. We think there are plenty of bees, that they have always been here and always will be. But that's not true. Since the early 2000s, bee populations have been declining at a catastrophic rate. In the United States, from 2006 to 2008, about 30% of all bee colonies died. In some states, more than half. The same in Europe. The same in Asia. Bees are disappearing quietly, without big news, without panic in the media. And that's why we do nothing. Have you ever heard of colony collapse disorder? If not, don't worry. I'll explain it now. The bee is an insect, order Hymenoptera. Its closest relatives are wasps and ants. That's no coincidence. They are all social insects with highly organized colonies. A worker bee is about 15 millimeters long. It weighs about 120 milligrams. You could place it on your thumbnail, and it would sit there, barely noticeable. But this tiny creature is part of a superorganism. A hive of 60 to 80,000 bees works as a single living body. It has organs, a queen, drones, workers. And this superorganism has one main function for the planet: pollination. Without pollination, there would be no fruit, no vegetables, no nuts, no coffee, no chocolate. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. The most important thing bees do is pollination. Not honey, pollination. About 80% of all flowering plants on Earth depend on insect pollination, and most of them depend on bees. About 1/3 of all the food that humanity consumes exists because of bee pollination. But the problem isn't only our food. Without bees, wild flowering plants would disappear. The plants that feed insects, birds, and small animals. The insects and birds that feed on those plants would disappear. Then the predators that feed on those birds and insects would disappear. The chain collapses from the bottom up. Ecosystems fall apart. And this wouldn't only affect fields and gardens. It would affect forests, meadows, grasslands, anywhere there are flowers. And flowers are everywhere except deserts and glaciers. The economic value of the pollination that bees provide to global agriculture is estimated at about $250 billion every year. This is a service that nature provides for free, as long as bees are alive. In the United States, pollination by bees is valued at $15 to $20 billion a year. Every almond orchard in California, the largest almond producer in the world, depends entirely on rented hives. Farmers pay beekeepers to bring hives during the bloom. Without bees, there is no harvest. But bees don't take money. They just do their job. And they die. And we don't even notice. Did you know that farmers rent bees? That hives are transported on trucks for thousands of miles? Yes, pollination is the main thing. But bees also give us something else. Honey. 100 million years of evolution have turned nectar into a substance that never spoils. In the tombs of Egyptian pharaohs, honey was found that was 3,000 years old, and it was still edible. Honey is a natural antiseptic. It was used to treat wounds in ancient Egypt. During World War I, when antibiotics were scarce, honey was used for bandages. Propolis. A resinous substance that bees collect from trees. It kills bacteria, viruses, and fungi. In the hive, they seal cracks and foreign objects with it. If a mouse gets into the hive, and the bees cannot remove it, they mummify it with propolis to prevent decay. Royal jelly. A substance that turns an ordinary larva into a queen. Genetically, the queen and the worker bee are identical. The only difference is what they are fed. Royal jelly extends life from 6 weeks to 5 years, and scientists still don't fully understand how it works. Bee venom. It is being studied as an anti-inflammatory and even as a potential anti-cancer treatment. Have you ever used honey or propolis as a medicine? Write yes, and tell me, for what? Honey is not just a sweet substance. It is the result of a complex biochemical process. A forager bee sucks nectar from a flower and stores it in her honey stomach, a separate organ not used for digestion. There, enzymes begin to break down the sugar. Back at the hive, she passes the nectar to another bee, mouth to mouth. That bee processes it further and passes it to the next. A chain of several bees. Then the processed nectar is placed into the cells of the comb. Bees begin to ventilate. They fan their wings, creating airflow. Water evaporates. When the moisture content drops from 80% to 18%, the honey is ready. The cell is sealed with a wax cap. To produce 1 teaspoon of honey, a bee must fly a distance equal to 2 trips around the Earth at the equator, about 120,000 kilometers, and visit about 2 million flowers. A single worker bee, over her 6-week life, produces about half a teaspoon of honey. If you have eaten a spoonful of honey, you have eaten the result of 12 bee lives. After hearing that number, will you eat honey differently? Write yes or no. I will. Bees don't just collect nectar. They communicate. They have a language. In 1946, the Austrian biologist Carl von Frisch made an incredible discovery. A bee that finds a field of flowers returns to the hive and performs a dance on the comb. The shape of the dance, its duration, and its angle relative to the vertical encode 3 pieces of information: the direction to the food source relative to the sun, the distance to it, and the quality of the food. Other bees watch the dance and fly directly to the spot. No GPS, no maps, no commands. This is symbolic language. For this discovery, von Frisch received the Nobel Prize in 1973. Could you draw a map of a place just by dancing? I couldn't, but a bee can. Amazing, right? Now, the scary part. Why are bees disappearing? The first and main reason is pesticides, especially a class called neonicotinoids. These chemicals are used in agriculture all over the world. They don't kill the bee immediately. They act on its nervous system chronically. The bee loses its ability to find its way home. It flies out for nectar and simply never returns. It dies somewhere in a field because it can't remember where the hive is. This is colony collapse disorder. The hive empties. Dead bees are never found because they die away from home. The European Union banned 3 of the most dangerous neonicotinoids in 2018. But in most countries, including the United States, China, and India, these chemicals are still widely used. The second reason is the varroa mite, a parasite that came from Asia. It feeds on the fat bodies of bees and their larvae. It weakens their immune systems. It carries viruses. Today, varroa is present in almost every hive on the planet, except Australia and a few isolated islands. Without regular treatment, the mite destroys a colony in 2 to 3 years. Beekeepers fight it with chemicals, but the parasite adapts, and in the wild, where there are no beekeepers, varroa kills bees relentlessly. Have you ever heard of the varroa mite? If not, you are not alone. The third reason is habitat loss. We are turning flowering meadows into fields of wheat and corn, and a monoculture field is a desert for bees. One plant species blooms for 2 weeks a year. The rest of the time, nothing. No food. Urbanization destroys meadows, forest strips, flowering roadsides. Wild bees lose their nesting sites, and no one can protect them. They are not domesticated. Have you noticed that lawns and fields around cities have become bare? No dandelions, no clover, nothing. The fourth reason is climate change. The timing of flowering is shifting. Bees are tied to a specific seasonal cycle. They arrive earlier or later, when the nectar is already gone or not yet available. Plants and bees have evolved together for millions of years. Their synchronization is perfectly tuned. Climate change is breaking that tuning, and no one knows how quickly bees will be able to adapt. Do you believe in climate change? It doesn't matter if you answer yes or no. What matters is that plants are blooming at different times. That is a fact. Bees are suffering from that fact. The fifth reason is pathogens. Fungal infections, viruses, bacteria. On their own, they are not that dangerous. But when a bee is already weakened by pesticides, mites, hunger, and climate change, its immune system cannot cope. All 5 factors act at the same time. They reinforce each other. This is called synergy. Each one alone would not completely wipe out bees. Together, they are. Now, the most sobering part. What would happen if bees disappeared completely? Year 1. The harvest of fruits, berries, and nuts collapses. Apples, pears, cherries, plums, almonds, all of them become much more expensive or disappear from store shelves. Farmers try to pollinate by hand with brushes or with drones, but that is hundreds of times more expensive. Year 2 or 3. Wild flowering plants disappear. Then the insects and birds that fed on them disappear. Then the predators that fed on those birds and insects disappear. Ecosystems begin to collapse in a cascade. Forests become quiet. No butterflies. No buzzing. Emptiness. Year 4 or 5. The global food production system is on the verge of collapse. 1/3 of humanity's diet has disappeared or become unaffordable for most people. Coffee, chocolate, nuts, apples, berries, all of these become luxuries for the poor and middle class. This is not a horror movie script. These are estimates from the UN Food and Agriculture Organization and the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. Serious organizations. Scientists. Not alarmists. Imagine your life without coffee, without chocolate, without apples. How many days would you last? Honestly, do you think this is just a theory? No, it is happening right now. In Sichuan province in China, where bees have disappeared due to the uncontrolled use of pesticides, farmers pollinate apple orchards by hand with brushes, flower by flower. A person with a brush walks through the orchard and transfers pollen from one flower to another. Imagine the scale. An apple orchard is thousands, tens of thousands of flowers. Each one must be pollinated by hand. That is brutal labor, and the apples that result cost as much as gold. Think about it. Are you willing to pay 10 times more for apples that were pollinated by hand? Because if bees disappear, that will be the reality. Maybe we can replace bees with robots. There are already prototypes. A Japanese company created a tiny drone with sticky bristles. A Harvard project is developing a swarm of micro-drones the size of a coin. But here is the problem. One honeybee hive has 60,000 worker bees. Each bee visits thousands of flowers a day. Imagine an army of drones that could replace that. It would be billions of drones with batteries that need to be charged, repaired, programmed. Bees do this for free, autonomously and perfectly, and have been doing so for 100 million years. Robots will not replace them in the foreseeable future. No one has even come close to matching the scale of living bees. Did you believe that robots would save us from the disappearance of bees? Now you know they won't. Enough of the scary talk. Let's get to business. What can you do? First, plant flowers. Any flowers. Even on a balcony in a pot. Bees need food. Every flower is a cafe for a bee. Second, don't cut dandelions and clover early in spring. That is the first food for bees after winter. Let them grow for at least a week. Third, don't use pesticides on your garden or lawn. There are safe methods. Mimic nature. Don't fight it. Fourth, buy honey from local beekeepers. Not from the supermarket, where it is often diluted and of unknown origin. The more beekeepers are supported, the more healthy hives there will be. Fifth, if you find a swarm of bees in your house or garden, don't kill them. Call a beekeeper. They will take the swarm away alive. In most regions, there are bee rescue services. Sixth, talk about this. Share this video. Tell your friends. The problem of bees cannot be solved without people. The more people know, the better the chances. What are you willing to do from this list? Write the number, or write nothing. Honesty is better than silence. We are used to not noticing the bee, to swatting it away, to being afraid of its sting, to thinking only about honey. But every fruit you eat has passed through a bee. Every flower you see exists because of a bee. Every tree in the orchard, every berry in the forest, it is the result of this quiet work that has been going on for 100 million years. While dinosaurs were born, lived, and went extinct, bees flew from flower to flower. While civilizations rose and fell, bees built their hives, danced their maps, warmed each other in winter. While we argue about politics, wars, and money, they do what makes life on Earth, as we know it, possible. One creature weighing 120 milligrams, with a brain that weighs 1 milligram, without which 1/3 of the world's food supply collapses. After this video, will you see bees differently? Write yes or no, and if yes, do at least one thing from the list. Bees cannot ask for help. They will not post on social media. They will not go on strike. They will not hold a protest. They will simply disappear, quietly, imperceptibly, as if they had never existed. And then, a few years from now, when there are no more apples, and then no more coffee, and then no more chocolate, and then half the products in the store are gone, someone will say, "Remember those insects? Bees? They used to pollinate things." And everyone will be surprised. And it will be too late. We are at the stage now where we can still stop this. Not by replacing bees with robots, not by saving them in test tubes, but simply by stopping killing them. Plant a flower. Don't poison them. Call a beekeeper instead of reaching for a can of insecticide. Bees don't ask for much. They ask for food and to not be poisoned. Is that so hard? If this video was important to you, subscribe to the channel. Here we talk about those who cannot speak for themselves, about those we do not notice, but without whom we cannot survive, about bees, elephants, wolves, birds, fish, about those who hold the planet together. And one last question, the most important one. Write one word in the comments. Agree if you agree that we must save the bees, or no if you don't care. Just one word. Honestly, I want to know how many of us are ready to make a change. Give this video a thumbs up if it made you think at least a little. Share it with one friend. Bees need advertising. And remember, the bee cannot say thank you itself. We will say it for her. Thank you for listening to the end. Now, take action.